All right, welcome along to the first RT Soccer podcast of 2023. Raf Diallo here. First time back since the World Cup final and in time for the start of the new League of Ireland season. We'll be looking ahead to the Premier Division and First Divisions today, which both get underway on Friday, including a live game on RT2 and RT Player at 7:30 between Cork City and Bohemians. And to look ahead to the new season, I'm joined by two past winners of the League of Ireland, former Cork City defender Neal Horgan and ex-St. Pat's and Shelbourne midfielder Conan Byrne. How are you both?
Great, Raf. Thank you.
Good stuff. Conan, just as we were saying before I hit record, it has actually been a full 3 months since the cup final, but maybe it's the World Cup effect, but it just feels like this has come round very, very quickly.
Yeah, and usually you're waiting for the League of Ireland season to start in anticipation. Not that I'm not. I'm really looking forward to this weekend's fixtures. I think the big one, obviously, is the live on telly game. Cork v Bow is going to be an electric atmosphere down at Turner's Cross, like it always is. But when a team has been down in the doldrums of the First Division and to come back up, it's going to be some atmosphere and then Turner's Cross on Friday night. So really looking forward to that. Obviously, Derry Pats is a big game as well. Looking forward to that game. And just the whole season, really, to see what's going to happen and how it's going to all play out. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, we'll get both of your predictions towards the end anyway, and we won't hold you to account because I never look back on these first podcasts when they're done. So you don't need
people do, Raf.
You should. I should, but I tend to look. The past is the past, and the future is the future.
Last year, I was spot on. Last year, if you check it, I'm telling you.
Which this was Cork City coming back.
Yeah,
up.
top three and the bottom three in the Premier Division, top three in the First Division. I was watching it all year then, yeah.
I will. I'll make a point of sourcing that clip, and we'll put it out again for your benefit. But anyway, let's start with the TV game that Conan mentioned there. So of course, Cork City back in the Premier Division and hosting Bohemians live on Friday, RT2 and the RT Player, 7:30 and 7:45 p.m. kickoff for that, and it's going to be one of an increased 18 league fixtures that we'll have on RT television this season. Neal, as you said, you got the prediction right about Cork City coming back up, and they're buoyant in other ways as well that you would have talked about last season. There was of course the ownership situation with Grovemore that hadn't been settled the last time I think I was talking to you. That has since been changed with Dermot Usher coming in as owner. It's a very young squad, but settled as well. But they do have the Turner's Cross backing as well that we would have seen last season. So with all that, what's your expectation for them this season?
Well, I think we have to kind of measure our expectations this year. Like, in fairness, the Cork City crowd generally be wise enough to know that you're going back into a Premier Division that's stocked with, I suppose, experienced Premier Division players, especially the top end of the table. I don't see us going anywhere near the top end of the table, really. We'd be doing well, really, to go mid-table, in my view, which he might do, Colin and his team. But there is a huge, I suppose, positivity around the club at the moment with the new takeover, which got them out of a kind of quandary they were in with Preston, which wasn't ideal at the time, or Grovemore, the owners of Preston. And they're out of that now. Dermot Usher's come in. He looks very keen. He's definitely been involved on the media side of it, and with you can see him. He seems to be doing a lot of work even to the ground. I've heard there's been work done, which would be good to see in terms of the facilities and stuff like that. But apart from that, he's met all the coaches and managers. You can see it. He's gone all the women's side of the club. He's put a big emphasis on, and so someone who's putting himself out there to that regard, I suppose it's all only positive signs all around. But in terms of our expectations, I would just, I myself, I went up with Cork City one time back 10 or 15 years ago now, and we did well to finish sixth on the year that we came back in, and I think something like that, or even just avoiding relegation, really would be good enough for me this year,
Yeah, and Conan, I suppose what we would have seen last season in terms of how the breakdown of the league and where clubs were, obviously Shamrock Rovers towards the top. There's a chasing pack of Derry City who are probably going to be closer this season, as we'll talk about later on. And then you've Pats and Dundalk kind of close. And then you have a bunch of clubs in the middle. And then last season would have been Finn Harps and UCD sort of eking it out on their own at the bottom. No Finn Harps this season. So in terms of what Neal's saying then there about Cork City, where do you see them where do you feel they're going to be battling? Is it sort of the middle pack, or is there a danger maybe with a young squad they could be closer to that battle where we would expect UCD to be?
Yeah, I just think, excuse me, I think with UCD, with them losing so many attacking players, with the likes of Dylan Duffy, obviously Liam Kerrigan left through the middle of last year, Thomas Lanigan up front, Colin Whelan, like that's a lot of firepower that you're going to be missing at the bottom end of the Premier Division. And I was talking to Andy Myler, actually. He made a point of coming over to me at the playoff game against Waterford, which they won, to say, you got your prediction wrong, Conan. Because I said anyone that finishes below them will be relegated. But I have to say the same thing again this year. I think if anyone finishes below UCD, they'll be gone. And with Cork, I can just see them being a little bit more experienced. And then as with the crowd at Turner's Cross, it's like, and for anybody that has never played there as a footballer, it's a very difficult place to go. With that unbelievable support behind them. And the only problem that I probably would have is like two positions on the Cork pitch, probably the goalkeeping position, where David Harrington has left to go to Fleetwood, and they've signed the new goalkeeper, Oluwawi, from Celtic. So it's just going to be interesting to see how he does. And then the attacking threat as well. They've brought in Tunde Owolabi, obviously, Ethan Berrien from Cork, on loan from Bowes. Going to be very interesting to see how he gets on. Daniel Kresic doesn't score enough goals. He was with Degford last year, 10 appearances, didn't score. But then the two lads, Rory Keaton and Keane Murphy, who've done really, really well last year in the First Division. But as I keep saying, there's a huge step up between the First Division and the Premier Division. And I think if Colin Healy does a similar job to what Damien Duff did at Shelbourne last year and keeping them in the division, I think it'll be a marvellous job.
Yeah, let's listen to Colin Healy. He was at the launch last week of the League of Ireland, which happened at Dublin City Hall. I was there as well, but he was chatting to Damien O'Mara as well. And in this particular clip, he's talking about the future for the fan-owned clubs. Obviously, they've moved on from Forest down in Cork, and obviously, as has been said, Dermot Usher's come in as owner. So he just kind of outlines that and the challenge for other clubs.
Obviously, there will be focus on the new ownership, and Forest have done so much to keep this club going. We look at something like Bohemians, fan-owned clubs. In reality, is that sustainable in the long run for fans to be at the driving force in terms of the running of a club, or with the money that's now increasingly in the league? You know, do you need someone to come in and drive it forward?
For the job that they've done is it's unbelievable. You know, the work that they've done. You know, when I came in the first year as manager, where we were then and now it's unbelievable. It's gone from strength to strength, but with the support coming in as well, with the fans coming in, it has helped us so much financially. You know, it can allow us to attract better players. Obviously higher wages, and that's happened. But I think where the likes of Derry and Rovers are, they're kicking on to another level. If you want to keep them, yes, I would think that you need a backer in. That's just my opinion on it, because I think the league is getting stronger and stronger. I think fans they can only take it to a certain point, you know. So, and they've been fantastic doing it. Listen, we got us back to the Premier League. There's a lot of work done behind the scenes, and we're back there because all the work that they've done.
All right, so that is Cork City manager Colin Healy speaking to Damien O'Mara of RTE Sport last week at the launch, and he's fairly realistic there about the challenge, Neil, as you kind of outlined at the beginning. As he says, the likes of Shamrock Rovers and Derry City, who have that sort of extra investment, I mean, I suppose they're pushing things along at the very, very top. It's going to be very challenging for other, I suppose, ownership models to follow suit.
Yeah, look, I suppose I've been fairly honest about my priority all along would be that there would be some element of fans ownership involved. That's not the case. I suppose the Grovemore situation really took precedence over allowing the fans in, I suppose, in priority. We had a problem in that Grovemore came in, took a call option that they decided against taking on. At that point in time, I was raising the issue that I didn't understand why the fans who had taken over the club, who had, you know, saved the club really from a debt, I suppose, weren't, you know, given even 10% or, you know, a talk in respect of that. Then when Usher comes in now, it seemed that part of the conversation is gone, and so be it. You know what I mean? For me, I'm just happy we're out of the quandary we were in, where it felt like Grovemore were there and they didn't want us, and you know, we were stuck in a call option situation. So I'm in agreement in general with Colin. I think you do need the backing of financially of someone, and Dermot Usher could be that person, to bring it on. But I suppose Shamrock Rovers have, I understand, a fans element to their ownership structure. Other clubs do, Bohemians obviously do, and that would have been my priority. But look, to be honest, I'm delighted to see Dermot Usher come in, given the good vibes he's providing throughout the club and the city at the moment.
Yeah, and speaking of Bohemians, of course, who do play Cork City in that opening week of action, Conan, they've done a lot of work, I think, is well documented off the pitch in terms of club culture. And the thing now, of course, after a very difficult transitional season last year, which saw the end of Keith Long's tenure, is to try and get that back on the pitch. Obviously, Keith Buckley coming back as captain is probably one element of that. I was chatting to him just on the way out at City Hall last week as well, and I think he's kind of conscious of that. It's something he'd said. It's something Declan Devine had also mentioned in the statement when he confirmed that Buckley was coming back. There's a few changes there, Conan, I suppose, with Pat Fennon also coming back as director of football. Like, what's your expectations in terms of what they can or can't do this season?
I'd say it's going to be a similar story at Bohemians this season, Raf. I'm worried defensively, if I'm being honest about them. They haven't recruited well in that area. Now, not to say, look, there's still a week to go. Well, a couple of days to go before the start of the season. But they brought in a lad, Jay Ben, from Lincoln City, who went off injured down in the pre-season friendly against Wexford on Friday evening. So that's another, another challenge for them now to get something over the line before Friday, because they'll need it. They've brought in Paddy Kirk from Sligo Rovers, who's ultimately a left back, but he's been playing centre half. They've lost James Finnerty to Sligo. They had Rob Cornwall in playing trial games, and he's not signed. He's not signed for them. So yeah, it's just defensively, I think they're not looking great at the moment. Now, going up the pitch, it's looking really strong. I think Keith Buckley is a massive plus for them. I mentioned numerous times last year the lack of leadership within the team, and bringing him back is huge. James Talbot in goal missed a chunk of last season through injury, so it's going to feel like a new signing with him. It's just, I suppose, again, similar to Cork, Raf, in terms of where the goals are going to come from. Dean Williams obviously comes in from Drogheda, still hasn't hit double figures in the League of Ireland. James Akintunde as well. His strike rate is really poor for an attacker. Now, having said that, his link-up play is absolutely excellent, and sometimes a goal scorer isn't going to score 10, 15 goals a year. I remember playing with Gary O'Neill, who was just brilliant with his back to goal and brought others into play. So maybe give Akintunde a little bit of won't give him as much slack. But yeah, I just think in that area, in terms of up the pitch, they've obviously brought in Dylan Connolly from Wimbledon as well, so that will add threat to their wings with Chris Twardek too. So yeah, it's just to see how it all beds in. Like, a lot of these teams have signed players, and some of them we don't know. If we're being totally honest, they've come from lower leagues in England or from Sweden or Finland, Faroe Islands as well. Some team, Sligo Rovers has signed a very, very promising attacker. So yeah, it's just going to be very interesting to see how the first couple of weeks of the season goes. But I'd say Bows are going to be the type of team that are going to be the best of the rest, if you know what I mean, in terms of the League of Ireland.
Yeah, as Conan said there about goal scorers, Neal, I suppose, replacing Georgie Kelly, that was never going to be an easy job given what he did in 2021. And of course, he moved on to Rotherham United then, and kind of left a void. And even looking at their goal scoring stats last season, Dawson Devoy would have been one of their higher scorers before he left mid-season. So it's one of those things. You can spread goals around, I guess, but it is helpful to have that sort of regular striker who's able to, in those sort of tight games where it's 0-0, heading down to the close, that's able to make a difference.
Yeah, and as Conan said, I think Cork City have the same problem this year, and I don't want to talk both down before they visit Turner's Cross on Friday, but it does seem to be the case that they've been on somewhat decline since the heydays of Long and Crawley, when they were challenging up the top, and I know they're winning derbies every now and again with Shamrock Rovers, but they seem to have dropped down the table a little bit. And, Shelbourne have clearly got stronger. If you look at the bottom of the table, like Drogheda did very well last year. I saw them when they were in the first division. I thought they were a good side, unified group, and they seem to have kept that going. Cork City will be like that. Hopefully, they'll be like a Drogheda coming up. When Drogheda were like that, they're young lads. They're building on that. They've experienced guys coming in. All that being said, both still have those experienced guys that Conan has referred to, like Chris Twarduk was a great player. I think just out of the guys he's named. And Cork City don't have that many guys who are experienced in the Premier Division, apart from the likes of Ali Gilchrist, who was a revelation down in Turner's Cross last year. He was absolutely brilliant for us. We don't have that many guys who played in the Premier Division. So Friday night's going to be very interesting. It's only the first game of the season, but still, it's not live on TV. It does show you kind of what you're looking forward to for the rest of the season. If one team gets beaten 3-0, you might think, either you're jumping back the next week or you're looking at a long season ahead where you're struggling at the bottom. And hopefully both of these sides aren't in that situation. But I'd agree with Conan. I don't think either of those sides are going to be challenging and would be doing well to be finishing sixth in the division as well. As much as there's good players in each team, the way it is, it's a good thing for the League of Ireland. There's very strong teams at the top, teams that have been consistent with their recruitment. They've kept the strong players, and they're like Cork City have had to, I suppose, take a few chances this year. Not as many as they would have in the past with players from Scandinavia. There's 3 or 4 guys came in, and we'll have to see. There's question marks. You know what I mean? I think they. Hopefully one of them provides something, it'll be a plus, because you just don't know. But it is that kind of game on Friday. I'm certainly looking forward to it. There's going to be a huge crowd. I can tell you that it's going to be a huge crowd, because Cork City back in the Premier Division. I have to just wait for me on this one. Is a brilliant thing. We've been down in the first division for a few years now. The club has been in turmoil. We have a bit of stability now. We have a young group of lads who the crowd have, really bonded with. And it's an exciting time. And it'll be interesting to see how they deal with next Friday night,
Yeah, and Bohemians, their first as the derby against Shamrock Rovers, as mentioned, the first iteration of that this season is going to be the 7th of April. So that's going to be marked down on the calendar. Now, speaking of Shamrock Rovers, of course, they're going for 4 in a row this season. Now, I wonder, is Stephen McPhail, the sporting director, allowing talk of 4 in a row? Well, he was also speaking to Damien O'Mara at the launch at City Hall last week. So let's have a listen to him.
How many times has 4 in a row been mentioned to you already today?
It's incredible. Yeah, I think taking it all in, it's all we said probably since we won it back in the winter. So we're trying to take away that from the players. They don't speak about it, to be honest. We're trying to just take every game as head on and look forward to the challenge.
But just to talk about the group, they are a group that constantly want to break new ground, be that group stage football in the Conference League, the Europa League, the Champions League. That I'd imagine they're not a group that want to emulate another team. They're a team that want to look at that team in the 80s and go a step better.
Yeah, because we've heard loads over the last number of years about the 80s team and the great team, and they're great fellas. They're always coming and supporting the team. A lot of them come to the training ground, so that it is in our faces that way, and it's a good challenge. I think it's something that, as you said, our group are looking forward to trying to emulate and go maybe one more, but the focus has to be on the daily stuff and making sure the standards are where they are and they don't slip, because that's the most important.
All right, so that is Shamrock Rovers sporting director Stephen McPhail, and it's not a case of don't mention the 4. Anyway, Conan, 4 in a row, as has been said, is the target for this season, and I mean that's just kind of logical once you've done 3, and if they remain as strong as they appear to be, that's obviously logical to go for that. Now, looking at the transfers that have gone in and out, so Liam Burt coming in from Bowes, then there's Trevor Clark, who's returned from England, Johnny Kenny on loan as well, and Marcus Poom, the son of the former Cult Hero goalkeeper, Premier League Cult Hero goalkeeper, Mark Poom, who I've actually weirdly enough interviewed in the past as well, but less about that than anything else. Marcus Poom is not a goalkeeper though, by the way, as well, which is kind of, I probably found a little bit strange because you just assume goalkeepers breed goalkeepers. But anyway, also on the way out, of course, significantly some talented young players, Andy Lyons and Idemo Amaku, and also Barry Cotter has also gone across to England as well. So Conan, looking at them, the whole idea is building on a position of strength. Are they stronger than when we left them in November?
Yes, I think so. Obviously they lost Andy Lyons, but I think an able replacement there is Trevor Clark. I think we've got to remember Andy Lyons played as a left wing back, and that's the position that Trevor Clark plays in naturally. And look, he's an excellent wing back, fullback, winger. He can take people on. He can play on the right. Remember his goal against Bohemians? You mentioned the derby a couple of years ago where he cut inside and put one into the top corner. I think was up for goal of the season. So he's capable of playing in a number of positions, which is obviously going to benefit Stephen Bradley. But the signings that he's made have been really, really good. But by the looks of things, Adamo Maku's gone. He brought in Johnny Kenny on loan, still only 19 years of age. Always said that they needed that number 9 to score 15, 20 goals. Yet they have won 3 in a row, and they've got the group stages in European competition. So who am I to tell Stephen Bradley? But I just think that they could even dominate even more with that number 9, and it'll be interesting to see how Johnny Kenny does. But I was just about to mention his name. Rory Gaffney had a wonderful season last year. So it's about, and we had a similar story last year about how he's going to fit everybody into the team. And I know it's a long season, and I'm sure there's plans to reach the group stages again, be it Europa League or Europa Conference League, which should be the aim. So it's just going to be interesting to see how he manages all that, which he's done remarkably well over the last 12 months and coming into this season as well. But interestingly enough, the last time, like Dundalk, obviously were on 3 in a row back in 2016, and Cork won the FAI Cup that year and won the President's Cup then 2017 and went on to win the league. Similar story. This could be a similar story this time around with Shamrock Rovers obviously winning 3 in a row. Derry win the FAI Cup. Derry win the President's Cup. Could be the same story be said to come November where Derry are winning the league again.
Yeah, omens, and we'll talk about Derry City very shortly. But Neil, first, just there, Shamrock Rovers are playing Sligo on this first weekend, and the departure of Aidan Keena is probably the big factor there. He was brilliant last season, not just in the league but also in the European run. Scored a load of goals, and he's gone to Cheltenham now. In terms of the challenge of replacing him, obviously as Conan mentioned earlier, they brought in a striker originally from the Faroe Islands, but as mentioned with Bohemians, and then I think you touched on it with Cork City as well, replacing those goals, even if you're able to spread it around the team, it's very difficult to do.
Very difficult. I mean, I'm sure Conan's been in teams where you've lost your key player. It certainly happened to me at Cork City a few times where we lost players, and sometimes you're fortunate enough you have guys coming through that are going to replace them, but quite often if you lose your key player, it could knock you. With Shamrock Rovers, like the last few years, I felt, in fairness, the likes of Ronan Finn, Gannon, you could go through all their players, these experienced guys who are delivering year after year. Stephen Bradley must take massive credit for this, obviously with McPhail and the others involved in it as well. But I remember, like Conan, remember a time when Bradley was getting criticised and people wanted him out, and he had been in maybe a year or two, maybe even 3 years, I can't remember, and people were saying time to cut now. And fairness to Rovers, they kept with him, they gave him a chance. And you don't always get that in the League of Ireland, as we'll all know, right? It's normally 2 years and you're out kind of thing if you don't do what the fans want, or you're not getting the results. And so you have to stand up to Shamrock Rovers and say they've been fantastic. Sligo Rovers, I was sad to see their manager leaving last year. Buckley, I think he's a man who would have managed you, Conan, right?
That's correct, yeah.
And a great guy. I bumped into him recently somewhere. I can't even tell you where now. IKEA. It was IKEA. And you know what? Just a great man of the league. And I think he was a guy actually at Sligo where you were wondering, could he do with a bit more time? It could have broken from. It's not. People think perhaps he's a kind of lenient manager, but he was doing very well there as well. So that's an interesting game to start the season, the two Rovers as it is. I always have a kind of, I used to hate travelling to Sligo. I'll be honest with you, from Cork. I used to hate it. It's the longest journey ever from Cork. You think it's shorter than it is. You think you're in Galway when you're there. You're not. There's another hour. But they're a lovely club. They have their facilities. They're going in the right direction in terms of what they're doing all around the ground. It seems to be one of those places, different to Cork in some respects. In Cork City players get recognised and all that, but they're there's competition from all the other sports. No doubt there's competition in Sligo too. But I remember when you're on the bus, there was always this sign for the showgrounds, which was like a tourist sign. You'd never see that anywhere else in Brown. And so they're a real soccer club. you'd wish them the best. They've been going well, but the Rovers game, I'm sure, will be a tough start for them.
Yeah, and speaking of IKEA, Sligo Rovers with John Russell, with Buckley's successor, has brought in a number of players from Scandinavia. So Johan Brannefalk from Norby, Lucas Browning from Lagerfeld, but also the returning John Mann, who was at St. Johnston, and he's returned to the club. Also other signings, James Finnerty, Danny Lafferty, Gary Boylan, and Bogdan Vashchuk as well. And then Nando Pineacker made permanent as well. Also Reese Hutchinson, who's arrived on loan from Cheltenham, and then Keena is gone, of course, and as mentioned earlier, Paddy Kirk, Shane Blaney's gone to Motherwell, and then Adam McDonnell gone to Bowes as well, and Lewis Banks to Arbroath. But Conan, you mentioned Derry City there a little bit earlier on, and of course we saw them last Friday night where they beat Shamrock Rovers 2-0 in the President's Cup up at the Brandywell, and this is off the back of doing what was being talked about last season, which is getting silverware and using it as a launch pad, as we've seen Cork City do before. Also Shamrock Rovers did that themselves, and when you look at them now and what Rory Higgins has brought in, and they've made some really clever signings, how do you feel they're equipped to take on Shamrock Rovers now over a full season?
Yeah, I think they're well capable. I think it's proven that. I think the President's Cup was huge in just terms of that belief. I know Shamrock Rovers, they played Derry, were brilliant on the night, absolutely brilliant. Now I know Shamrock Rovers, their team wouldn't have been full strength, but having said that, just the way Derry played, their quality on the ball, their energy for a pre-season game. I've talked about Adam O'Reilly so much over the last 12 months since he came in at St. Pat's last year, and the energy that he brought that team, and obviously we'll talk about St. Pat's later on, but his energy levels are absolutely incredible. He must be one of the fittest in the league, and him with Diallo in the middle on Friday were a joy to watch. And then you have Patrick McElhenney to come in as well into that midfield. I just love the way they play. I like the style of play, how they play out from the back. They're wide men. They're so direct. We obviously saw Ryan Grade in the cup final, how good he was against Shelbourne. Ben Doherty has come in now from Larne as well. Played against Ben a few times, both in the League of Ireland and in the Northern Irish League when I was with Glenavon. And the change in him between when he was first with Derry to where he is now has been incredible. The confidence that he has got from playing up the north has just been remarkable. He can play in a number of positions as well, at left back, left wing back, a bit like Trevor Clark, left wing. But he's very much attacking, and you can I was a right side midfielder. I would have hated to have come up against Ben Doherty and Michael Duffy on that side, and I can only imagine that fullbacks and wingers on that side would be very reluctant to come up against those two on a given Friday evening. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing how they get on. Obviously, Colin Whelan, Jamie McGonigal as well up front. Keane Kavanagh has done really, really well in pre-season scoring goals. He probably would have put him at third choice, but with the goals that he scored in pre-season, he started the other night. Rory Higgins isn't afraid to make those decisions. Obviously McGonigal was flying form last year, hit double figures, but Keane Kavanagh starts the season. So really interesting to see how it goes. Obviously, condolences with Rory and his family over the death of his brother. And I'm sure that's very difficult for him at the moment. But his team paid him back in with just rewards with a fantastic performance on Friday.
Yeah, I think we all echo those condolences as well to the Higgins family. And you mentioned Colin Whelan there. He's still a couple of months away from a return from injury. I was talking to him at the launch last week, and he's looking forward to it. Obviously, he had a brilliant last kind of 3 years with UCD. But Michael Duffy was mentioned earlier there, Neil. I mean, he was only able to play a bit part last season, and probably towards the crucial end of last season, of course. He did play a role, but injury sort of in the middle chunk of the season sort of robbed Derry of his influence. So he's going to almost be like a new signing, especially if he can get a full season.
It was a bit of a knock to them last year when it happened, wasn't it? They just brought him in, and what a great player to bring in from Dundalk. And he was brilliant at Dundalk as well, to be fair to the guy. So I think he's going to be a huge, like you said, Raf, like a new signing. I think when Derry are strong in the league, it's generally a strong league. I think Conan might agree with me, and they add something else to the league that the other clubs kind of don't add. They generally play good football. Rory Higgins, Conan would have came against him again, was a very good player himself, and would have played under Stephen Kenny at a time when Derry played a lot of good football, had a very good side. He's obviously rebuilding that. bringing a lot of Derry fellas back, like Duffy and the other guys who are kind of spread around the league for a while. That can happen, you know, when they weren't going so well. So credit to them. It throws it up nicely, because we needed someone to kind of take over the mantle of maybe Dundalk for a while. And I'm not sure what Dundalk are like now with Stephen O'Donnell this year. I'm not, you know, saying they're out of it by any means, but it seems to be the case that Derry are the main challengers going on last year. Last year was their first year kind of with a strong squad, strong team, where they're saying, right, we're going to go at it. It always seemed too far away. If you look at my predictions at the start of the year, Raf, last year, I did say that I felt it was the first, a bit too soon for them. But this year, like Conan's saying, you know, maybe not, you know, and you know, it's a tough thing to have to win 4 in a row that like Rovers are going for. You know, you're going to come across problems. Like Derry were going so strong up till maybe halfway through the year, even 3/4 way through, that they could go again. And it makes for a great year this year in terms of 2 teams really challenging at the top, and maybe the pretenders to the throne. Now Cork have to go there in the second game of the season, and do you know what? I'm hoping they get some kind of result against Bows, so that they're going to Derry, you know, their heads kind of held high and maybe getting a point. And then I think they face UCD in the third game at home. So sorry, now I always look through a Cork spectrum with this. And to be honest with you, we haven't seen Derry. I know Cork played Derry in the cup last year, but we haven't seen Derry down in Cork. We haven't seen Rovers. We haven't seen a lot of clubs, and it's very exciting from a Cork prism again, to see these top teams come. It was great to see Athlone and all the other clubs, don't get me wrong, and we had fierce competition. The likes of Longford were very strong actually last year. I know there's a lot of change, but it's great to see Cork back in the Premier Division, and looking forward to seeing the likes of Derry travel the length of the country down to Cork, you know.
Yeah, when we talk about the President's Cup last season, of course, it was Pats that were playing. It happened, won the cup in 2021. And of course, straight after winning that cup, there was a huge amount of upheaval with managerial changes. Tim Clancy came in, and it was a very inconsistent season, especially the first part of it. We weren't really in a conversation for league titles. And then it was just a case of trying to keep their place in Europe. And they did quite well in the European run itself, of course. And Conan, looking at the strengthening that they've done. So Tom Lonergan, who was brilliant for UCD towards the end of last season and would have scored the crucial goal in the playoff final against Waterford. He's come in, and Jake Mulroney as well from Orlando. Do you think they can push a little bit closer and, close, especially, and it was something I was talking to Clancy about at the launch last week as well. It was just, less upheaval, and I suppose a bit more stability coming into a season, fewer new players in, more settled squad. It might be a bit easier to get that run of consistency earlier in the season now.
Yeah, I think so. I'm excited about Jake Mulroney. I think possibly he could be the I wouldn't say the best signing over the course of the off season, but certainly up there. I just think with him and his pace and power, his ability on the ball, he's so direct as well. And just him and Chris Forrester, Owen Doyle in the same team, it could cause a lot of problems in opposition defences. So I'm excited to see how that goes. Obviously, the loss of Adam O'Reilly I mentioned already will be big, but Jamie Lennon was injured last year for a large portion of that of the season. So with him back, a full pre-season behind him is only going to do him good. And another experience, the club captain Joe Redmond, who was absolutely phenomenal last season, still only a young man, and a bit more experience under his belt as well. It's that defensive area that I'd worry a little bit about St. Pat's. Apart from Joe, who I think is real star quality, struggling to find anyone else that has that ability that matches him. And in order for them to compete with the likes of Derry and Shamrock Rovers, I think they needed another strong, dominant centre half. Now Tom Gravosti is excellent. Harry Brockbank has come in and done really, really well. But yeah, I just think that they needed to strengthen in that area as well. But having said that, going up the pitch, looking really, really good. And with Mulroney, Tom Lonergan as well coming back to the club, Owen Doyle, Mark Doyle, Serge Atakai, they've got real attacking threat, and they'll cause problems to opposition defences, like I mentioned.
And Conan, what's your view also on Dundalk? So similarly, obviously they were involved sort of with Pats in the whole managerial merry-go-round this time last year. Less upheaval this time, and I was talking to Stephen O'Donnell as well at the launch, and a lot of their signings they've made from outside the league, but in the UK, and a lot of that's sort of like the core that they've brought in, and but arguably the biggest signing in a way, and it's maybe less to do with what happens on field, but the longer term structures of the club and trying to get them back where they have been previously and where they want to go. Brian Gartland coming in as director of football operations as well, so there's a good bit of change there.
Yeah, but players that know the club. And I think that's really important. I think he's going to be a big loss to them off the pitch, but by signing Louis Ansley, the Gibraltar international, I think he's got 35 caps. A leader. And they needed that with Brian gone. So be himself and Andy Boyle. They've brought in another lad from Millwall, Hayden Muller. Archie Davies has come in from Aldershot as well. So strengthened defensively. But I think with a lot of people, like last year, a lot of people spoke about last year about Stephen O'Donnell's involvement in the transfer market not being good enough, but they finished third, did really well with the signings that they made. And he's an eye for a player. There's no doubt about it. Cameron Elliott has come in as well from East Kilbride in Scotland. But we can never underestimate these lads. Remember Gary Twigg coming in from Brecon City and look what he did to the League of Ireland. So you never know. But yeah, I just with the player, with the off the field stuff is very important, and Brian Gartland going in as director of football operations is a huge move considering his business involvement outside of football alone. So he knows how to run a business as well. And
he obviously knows Dundalk like the back of his hand. He knows what a really good Dundalk setup looks like.
Absolutely. And I think that, as I said, they'll push for Europe. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Bringing in Conor Malley as well from Rochdale to strengthen up that midfield. You've got Alfie Lewis, Keith Ward, the skillful technician, and Robbie Benson is still there, a multiple winner. So you still have got that quality that they have from last year. But just because we mightn't know the names that Stephen O'Donnell has brought in doesn't mean that they're not quality.
Yeah, and Neil, I suppose Conan mentioned UCD at the top in terms of how difficult it's going to be for them, but that's a perennial thing, and I'm sure Andy Myler knows what the task is. And when you look at as we kind of mentioned at the top, how the table tends to break down, it's going to be hugely difficult for them, because Drogheda United maybe were one of the clubs people would have thought maybe last season would have got dragged closer to them, but that didn't happen. They were in that sort of middle pack alongside the likes of Shelbourne, and then Bows slightly ahead as well. It's UCD in terms of avoiding automatic relegation. It's kind of hard to see it at this point, but then again, they proved everyone wrong last season.
Yeah, you know what? I wouldn't, in fairness, like you said, I wouldn't put them there at the moment. I think, like last year, you had Finn Harps and them in the league, and you thought, right, it's between them who gets the honor. But this year, like they stayed up. I know Conan said they've lost a few players. You just don't know UCD. I've been involved in UCC, coaching UCC at various Harding level, and UCD produce players at every level that surprise you. And Conan, did you play UCD?
Yeah, I came through there, yeah.
So he's another fellow who surprised you, right? But, but no, all jokes aside, Robbie Benson, you'd be surprised who they could produce in a year like that. So I wouldn't, no, to be fair, on the other scale, and there have been years, even when I was playing, where they'd surprise the level, they'd jump a few places, you know what I mean? So now you do need experienced guys. You do need, a good. They need to be lucky with a bunch of guys who can find their form in the first season, and that's a tough task for anyone, right? And so you are looking at that, but at the moment, I just wouldn't put them into that space at the moment. Like Cork City, to be fair, like they have a lot to prove. They did win the division last year with a few games to spare, but in their games against Galway and Waterford, they didn't do great. They didn't do great. They didn't, they may have got a good few results, but towards the end of the year, they certainly, they were beaten by Galway. And against the bigger teams, which would now be every game, they kind of struggled. Whereas they were great against kind of the mid. They got the 3 points away and home against the mid-table teams last year. This year, let's wait and see. I see Bows near or not the bottom, but in the bottom half, perhaps. Drogheda, maybe. And then we'll have to wait and see with Sligo. That's a lot of change in terms of players. They're probably hoping for the other end. Shells may have looking to push on again. But it might be that there'll be 5 or 6 teams playing and quite close to each other, and maybe not one that's clearly going to get down, which would make it exciting. But I wouldn't like to be one of those teams from a playing point of view,
Yeah, and Conan, Drogheda United did really well last season in terms of there was never really any danger of relegation from pretty much the start of the season. They were well away from that, and finished very solidly under Kevin Doherty in his first season in charge. And but they have lost a few experienced names. So the likes of Chris Lyons and Dane Massey have moved on, and the players they brought in are more of the youthful variety.
Yeah, and a bit of change off the pitch too, with Conor Hoey not being chairman anymore, and the first lady chairman or the only woman chairman of the 20 League of Ireland clubs, and Joanna Byrne going in. So that's great to see from that point of view as well. They've made some signings though. Again, in striking reinforcements, because obviously Dean Williams has left, Chris Lyons has left, so they brought in Jonathan Leddy on loan from Shamrock Rovers, which is going to be. Hopefully he'll do okay. And Freddie Draper as well. He's come on loan from Lincoln. And they needed to strengthen in that area, obviously, with those players gone. I think the biggest signing for them, if I'm being honest, is Conor Keeley. He's come in from Ballymena United. He was very much sought after up north. I know a lot of teams were looking at him. But he just wanted to come back closer to home, and Drogheda have got a really good player. He played at Capantili, obviously, and was doing okay, but went up to Ballymena in a really tough league. And physical and strong, and he's come back down here. I think he'll do really, really well this season. And bringing in Sean Brennan from UCD is a good sign as well. He likes to get on the ball, small in stature but huge heart. And he's going to try, and he'll probably sit inside along with Gary Deegan in the middle of the park to try and dictate play, which will be interesting from a team that are sitting just off the bottom from last season. Fiacre Pagel has come in from Forest Green Rovers as well in goal to create competition for Colin McCabe. So I think it's good business by Kevin Doherty and Dara Doyle in the Drogheda United, and the renaming of the stadium as well to Weavers Park, another string to the bow of Drogheda and what they're doing in the local community. So great to see the work being done up there.
Yeah, and let's talk about Shelbourne, of course, as well. Damien Duff, he was also at the launch, and I think, as mentioned elsewhere, obviously he's been a great addition to the league. Last season, of course, they reached the cup final and finished solidly in the league itself as well. But just at the launch, the biggest media scrum was around him. I was part of that. There's pictorial evidence as well. Eric White from the BBC put a picture out, and I don't think there was, every manager was sought after, but I think Damien Duff only stayed for a very short time, got out of the building fairly quickly. So everyone, there was just one opportunity, just had to kind of go for it. But anyway, he was also speaking to Damien O'Mara. So let's have a listen to what Damien Duff had to say.
From a personal point of view, how do you enjoy, or how do you kind of process the attention? Like, even looking at the launch today, the scrum of people around you upstairs when you were doing your newspaper briefing is far and above anyone else. Like, is that something you're comfortable with, something that you're aware of personally?
That's probably the reason, and no disrespect to you guys, that I didn't want to come. Probably naive from me, but I'm always the one to probably give the soundbite that gives the headline. I don't intentionally do it, but it's just me being honest. So do I enjoy it? No. Am I used to it? I guess yes, but I absolutely don't like being in the media, the headlines contrary to popular belief, regardless of me doing RT and what have you. All I do and where I'm most happiest at is on a pitch coaching or on a touchline on match night.
So then, is your barometer of success as much seeing the development of players and seeing stuff that you've tried to implement work as much as it is, like, obviously you're judged on results on a Friday night or judged on a league table at the end of the season, but is your barometer of success much different when you delve into it?
Well, listen, I'd like to think a winner at heart, so I still dream about trophies. I still dream about Europe and get back to the Aviva and what have you. But here, as much as I love my career, I can safely say it sometimes, I'm sure Joey and the staff will agree with me, you might work on something on Monday to Thursday and it comes off on a Friday night and you win a game. Here, it's not far off scoring a goal in your career. It's an absolutely amazing feeling. So I just love coaching players and building a football team, and like I said at the top of this conversation, I think the team, the squad, the club is in a much better place than this time last year.
All right, that is Shelbourne manager Damien Duff, and he's not wrong about being good at giving people headlines. He gave me a very easy one last week as part of that media scrum. I asked him, just in the middle of it, I asked him, does like top, managing as the head coach, does it change as a person? And then he gave the line back. I did something I was scared of, and I'm thoroughly grateful. Didn't need to think of a headline at all. Just paste the code. Job done. Job done. So thanks for that, Duffer. But anyway, last season, Conan, as I said, very solid placing in the league, seventh in the league, and then reached the cup final. Obviously, that didn't go well. It was a heavy defeat to Derry City, but he seemed really confident at the end of that conversation with Damien. He has a very settled squad. Again, gone for a lot of kind of young additions, but as he mentioned at the launch, it's more of a consequence of if you're going to pay for an experienced player, Shelbourne wouldn't really have the budget for that in terms of the investment that they might have hoped for didn't really come in. And Paddy Barrett's the most experienced player they have brought in over the winter, 29-year-old there. But Conan, how do you expect them to do this season, especially given that they have had that first season with them in charge and with Joey there as well, and it seems quite settled?
Yeah, they've signed okay. Like obviously Paddy Barrett has come in, Andrew Quinn has come in from Drogheda as well. Good centre half. Keane Levy has come in as well, unknown from Reading. And then Evan Cafferty, obviously from UCD, who did really, really well in that UCD team last year, grandson of Theo Dunn. And they've signed in Kyle Robinson as well. So they needed somebody in attack. Now, I don't know if he's the answer, but with Sean Boyd hitting double figures last year, he'll need to do it again this year because there's nobody else that could possibly, in my opinion, get to double figures apart from himself. So it'll be interesting to see what will happen if he gets injured, suspended, or the like, because he's a really important facet in their play. Obviously, Jack Moylan was injured towards the end of last season. With all the work and energy that he puts into games, it was no surprise. I think the area though that I'm concerned with the most is the goalkeeper. And I don't like doing it before the season starts and putting emphasis on Conor Cairns, but I just feel that when he left UCD and signed for St. Pat's, Stephen O'Donnell signed him. He didn't play a game, and then he went to Galway, did reasonably well in Galway, and then the playoff game at the end of the season against Waterford, the 3 goals were all errors. So it's a huge vote of confidence on his behalf that Damien Duff wants to sign him. And it's going to be a huge season for him in order to kind of pay back what he has done so far in his career. He did really, really well at UCD. Really top goalkeeper. Obviously, low in confidence at St. Pat's when he didn't get a game. When he went to Galway then and did reasonably well, but then in the big games, again in the playoff where you want your keeper to come through and perform really, really well, it didn't happen for him. So that's the area that I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how he gets on. I really hope he does well. But Damien Duff's shown enormous faith in him. But that's the area that I'd have, I don't know, just a bit of concern about.
Yeah, and that's all of the Premier Division clubs. Obviously, the First Division also getting kick-started also this season or this weekend, and huge amount with Cork City gone. Obviously, Neal, there is a replacement from a neighbouring county now with Kerry FC coming in.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of goodwill towards the club. Obviously, a new one, I suppose, a new area for the league within the top 2 divisions to have some coverage. And I don't know what your expectations are for them. Obviously, Billy Dennehy has gone in there as sporting director and is also the manager, and I was chatting to him as well at the launch. They're fairly realistic about expectations there. They're not there's no onerous expectations on the squad, especially in the first season. But what do you make of that, their addition to the league, I suppose, and what you may expect from them?
Firstly, I think it's a very, very positive thing. I mean, this is what you want to see, the league branching out into areas that today it have been kind of untapped, you know what I mean? And when I was playing underage, we would have come across Kerry teams, maybe Tralee Dynamos or, Clarny Celtic or whatever, and they were always very good, they had players, and then you wouldn't see any more of them after 18. You were like, what happened to those guys? Did they go playing GA or whatever? So this allows those guys who maybe aren't good enough to go to England, in theory, when they're 16, you can't do it anymore, right? to stay in the League of Ireland, it's a huge thing. Like Billy himself had to go across channel, came back, played with Derry and Cork. I listened to Billy Dennehy talk about this setup and this idea. And I think they were very realistic with what they're like. In fairness, Billy knows, he's been traveling the league. He knows the costs involved. He knows the risks involved in setting up something like this. You don't want to be, with all due respects, a Sporting Fingal or a club that go up and then come back down again. You know what I mean? So I think they're going to be, they're going to just take it slow. They're an addition. They're a great addition. They're going to produce talent. I can tell you that for nothing. There's fierce talent to Kerry. We all know that as in terms of Gaelic football. It's there in terms of soccer as well. I can tell you that from first-hand experience. Whenever I did have to play down in Kerry, you just never see them after 18, and this might change that. It'll take a few players from Cork, which is a challenge to Cork City. This was within our kind of our jurisdiction as such for a while. But I think it's a massive thing for the league. You like to see more of it. And I think hopefully the people behind it and Tralee Dynamos, who kind of seem to have a big role in this, have been around the game a long time. Of course, there's been problems previously in the likes of Kilkenny City, Kildare County. Let's hope that the FAI and whoever can give them as much support and direction as possible, does that, because this is the growth area that our league needs to take, both for men's and women's, and I think they deserve every bit of support for what they're doing, and I hope they have a good year. You know what I mean? Even if they end up at the bottom of the league for a year or two, so be it. But hopefully I don't think they will. By the way, I think they'll do okay, and I think after a few years, I could see them doing quite well.
Yeah, and they're starting off against Cove Ramblers at Mount Hawk Park in Tralee this Friday. Now, Conan, I suppose, when what Dennehy was saying to us, of course, there's the collegiate side as well. So they've linked in with the colleges, which is an important thing because they'll have a lot of young players, and also with the amateur status as well. It's key to have the educational side of it as well. But in regards to I suppose they know they're sort of going to be symbolic to, and there have been other clubs, as Neal has mentioned there, clubs that have come in and then sort of gone again, that there are other areas in the country, the likes of Mayo, elsewhere, and other areas maybe where there have been clubs and maybe where something could happen again. He's sort of realistic about how difficult the route in and the whole licensing process is, and how Kerry had to jump through a few hoops to even get to this point. So there is the idea of a third division or third tier coming at some stage, but it's going to. I don't think we can have too much expectations that a lot of other regions are going to be covered anytime soon, just with how onerous things are to even get to the point that Kerry FC are getting to.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a bit like Drogheda United when they came into the league. They just came in and wanted to get their finances okay, bring academy players through, give a platform for players in Limerick to go and play, and it turned out really, really well for them. Tommy Barrow has done a tremendous job, and with Kerry, I think it's going to be hopefully pretty similar. Billy Dennehy I don't know if I've met a man that is so interested in football and is just so determined to succeed, and hope he does really, really well down there. I've no doubt about it. No doubt he will. They've actually signed, only this morning, they signed Kevin Williams, a former Cove Ramblers player who's been playing in the lower leagues in Germany. Leo Gax has come in from Sheffield United as well. He's a talent. So they do have talented players. And like Neal says, their academy are doing really, really well. So they will have up and coming players. But let's not get carried away. I don't think they're going to perform. I don't think they'll be near the playoffs, for instance, in the first division. But that's not what it's about. It's about having football in Kerry. And because it was so difficult to get teams, to get a Kerry team into the league, you're right. It is going to be difficult for other counties to follow suit. Obviously, Monaghan and Cavan are in the lower leagues, are in the academy levels. There's Carlow Kilkenny as well that are in the academy under 17s, under 19s. But you wouldn't want to stop other county teams or trying to get into the League of Ireland. And I think that's something that we need to look at. We need to encourage teams to try and participate at the top level in our country. And if we do that and make it an easier process, that has to be done. But with Kerry in the league, it's given great platform for players in the Munster area. We've seen Cork now get back up into the Premier Division. Waterford are going to challenge. We'll probably talk about them shortly, but Waterford are going to challenge in the First Division. And then you have Treaty doing really, really well. And obviously now Kerry as well. So it's great to see that in the League of Ireland.
Yeah, as you mentioned at the top end there, so Waterford, Danny Searle, what he said at the launch was they've no option really but to go for automatic promotion this season. Of course, they missed out through the playoffs after losing to UCD in the decider last November, and Galway United, John Caulfield's Galway United are also going to be pushing again. They tailed off a little bit towards the end of last season. Finn Harps have come down, and well, we'll see exactly how things shape up for them. Can they sort of bounce back straight away? But I suppose, Neil, are they sort of the trio you're expecting, maybe with the likes of Longford Town, and maybe, I don't know about Ian Ryan's Bray Wanderers. We'll talk about all of those very shortly, but that in the shake-up, it's going to be that trio really pushing first and foremost.
I think so. I think John Caulfield did good business in bringing in Neal Horgan to the backroom staff from Finn Harps. I think he probably looked at it from a few different viewpoints, but they needed to recruit a few more players. They had a good season last year, but they would have been disappointed, that they didn't, get promoted really. Waterford were less, I think, disappointed. They were kind of more, this is their first time out kind of thing, and will be stronger this year. So it bodes up for a good season. I think, from what I'm hearing about Longford, they've lost a good few players, so they mightn't be as strong as they were, unfortunately. Finn Harps, let's see. Other than that, Bray, perhaps. In the division, Cove Ramblers are in a position just down in Cork where Shane Keegan has come in, and we'll see. They may get to the playoffs. Would be their, I suppose, goal really. It would be a tough ask, to be honest. Having finished last year on the bottom. Athlone were an interesting team last year. I actually went to see Athlone play in Athlone and their new stand, which was brilliant. And they were a different team in Athlone in the AstroTurf than they were down in Cork, I can tell you that. And if they had a bit of potential, I'm not sure if they've kept their players, but they were quite good. So there's lots to be played for. I think the favourites have to be, in my eyes, Galway. And I think anything but promotion this year for John Caulfield probably won't be acceptable, because they've been at it a while, and I'd say John is aware of that himself.
Yeah, and as mentioned there, so Ian Ryan, I had a good chat with him at the launch as well. He's gone to Bray Wanderers after a really good period, 18 months with Wexford, and he's also brought a load of former Wexford players with him as well. And there's James Keddy, who's gone from Longford assistant now to Wexford, and I think, as you mentioned, it's the kind of merry-go-round. And then Stephen Henderson's returned to management as well, and he's taken charge of Longford. As you mentioned, Athlone, they've stuck with Dermot Lennon, who was the director of football, and he's been confirmed as manager for this season alongside his usual role as well. And then, as you mentioned, Shane Keegan, this time he's going to have a full pre-season with Cove as well. So it's going to be interesting. Conan, for you, looking at that sort of mid-table to bottom mix as well, how do you expect that to shake up, and who might be? Well, obviously, a couple of those will be going into the playoffs with the trio that we mentioned before. But how do you see that kind of shaking up? Because it's a huge amount of change for a number of clubs.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I've been really impressed with Wexford, if I'm being honest. James Keddy has gone in there and done really, really well. Got a great result against St. Pat's, albeit it's kind of would have been their under 19s. But they did have Chris Forrester and a couple of others playing in the first team, and Jordan Adeyemo, who's been with Longford and Galway, scored a hat-trick in that game, and through a bit of business getting him in, and they've signed really, really well. Mark Hanratty has come in, former Dundalk player that was with Longford last year. I think James Keddy brought a few of them down, brought Carl Chambers down as well. And a couple of huge signings down there were Conor Leviston gone in from Bowles, and then obviously Ethan Boyle, which is two Wexford natives now playing for the club, which is great to see down the southeast. So I think they'll do pretty well. Treaty, again, we haven't mentioned them. I think with the likes of Enda Curran scoring goals the way he does, if he fires in all cylinders, they're going to do well. Mark Ludden, they've signed Ryan Connolly from Finn Harps, which is, again, a very, very good signing. Colin Conroy as well, a former Bowls underage player. He did well last year. He probably just needs to kick on a little bit now. And Anto O'Donnell has returned to the club, which is a huge plus for them in defensive area. But yeah, Bray are going to be are going to be good. I tipped Bray to win the league last year, so I don't know whether I don't want to say anything about Bray Wanderers this season. But yeah, they've signed well. I think the manager is doing really, really well. Ian Ryan, he did really well at Wexford, getting them off where they were. They were adrift at the bottom of the first division and got them very, very close to the playoffs in 18 months, which is a huge achievement. And bringing in the likes of Chris Lyons, Dave Webster again from Finn Harps, Dane Massey, these are real seasoned pros, very experienced players. But Ger Short, he came in from Collinstown midway through last season and was absolutely superb for Wexford in tore Dundalk apart in that League Cup game, or the FAI Cup game, should I say? And it's going to be very interesting to see how he gets on at the Carlisle grounds. But Finn Harps too, you could have a thing for every club. With Dave Rogers and what he's bringing in, he's brought in a lot of unknowns from overseas as well, the likes of Tim Heimer, Philip De Silva. I wonder how these players are going to get on. And as Neal mentioned, Cove Ramblers and Athlone, and they were obviously the two worst teams in the division last season. But with Dermot Lennon, when he came in midway through the season, they pushed on. They did really, really well. They've lost Sammy Clark to UCD. But Adam Lennon has come back, son of Dermot, and he's done really, really well as well. And then with Cove, got a fantastic draw on Friday night against Cork City. They drew 1-1 with them. And with Shane, you're going to get an organised team that are going to give your heart and soul to you. And it's just going to be, as I said, it's very, very hard to call. I disagree with Neal. I think Waterford will win it. And I think Galway will come up runners up again.
Yeah, and of course, as you said, Treaty United there, of course, they had a very good cup run last season as well. So I think it even bottle part of that, and they were very solid last season, 5th place as well. So we'll see how that pans out. So fixtures, just as a reminder for everybody for this opening weekend, St. Pat's against Derry City, 7:45 on Friday. Cork City against Bows, that's the TV game, also 7:45 kickoff, and it'll be 7:30 when the actual program starts on the telly. And then Dundalk against UCD at the same time, Shelbourne against Drogheda at the same time, and then on Saturday, Shamrock Rovers are at Sligo Rovers at the showgrounds to kick off their defence and their potential road towards the 4 in a row. And then in the first division, Wexford taking on Waterford, Treaty United against Bray Wanderers, Kerry's debut in League of Ireland level against Cove Ramblers, Finn Harps against Galway United. That should be a cracking game between two teams who should be contending towards the top of that division. And then Longford Town at Lone on the Saturday, so a Midlands derby to start off there. So that's going to be that's pretty exciting for the start of the season for those two clubs. Now, I did say there will be predictions, so we'll start with you, Neal. We're going to get your champions top 4. Who's going to finish bottom?
Premier Division, yeah.
Yeah, Premier Division, yeah.
I'm going to go Rovers again, and Derry, Dundalk, Pat. Although I changed Pat, I say Shells instead of Pat, so it's a bit.
Ooh,
yeah, very good. What else do you want?
No, and I think you said automatic promotion anyway, so we know. You'd said that already. And Conan, finally for yourself, champions, top 4, as in I suppose the European race, and then also who's going to be going straight down.
I did say my little stats earlier on about the President's Cup and FAI Cup and all that type of stuff. So, but going by that, I'm going with Derry City, Raf. And top 4 then, obviously, Shamrock Rovers, St. Pat's and Dundalk. And then automatic promotion, like I said, I think Waterford will get that. And
who's going down?
I don't want to say it again.
Well, I know you said it earlier, but
you're just trying to rub it in there.
Yeah, for the official record that will be played back.
Sorry, Andy Meyer at UCD.
Right.
So stay not Cork City. That's all I'm saying. Not Cork City. Leave it at that.
Yeah, we've heard that one loud and clear. But anyway, yes, as we said, one match on TV this Friday for everybody to look at. So that's Cork City against Bohemians. We'll also be previewing the Women's Premier Division in a couple of weeks, just before the season kicks off. And it's going to be an interesting one as well, because Shamrock Rovers have entered the league and have also made some huge signings as well. And I was chatting to Collie O'Neill there at the launch as well. And they're quietly confident, but they're going to be taking it easy. But anyway, that's it for this week. week. We'll be back with the podcast next week. Conan and Neal, thanks very much for your time on what is a very sunny February, which is kind of unexpected.
Very
I guess,
sunny in Cork.
Yeah.
For once, splitting the stones down here.
You don't always have the curtains closed. I think that's just for the record, though.
Always.
But anyway, thanks very much for coming on this week, guys. And Pod will be back next week.